Thank you so much for joining me. It's been great being invited here with our SchoolRubric. I'm going to be looking at inclusive strategies for the virtual classroom. I've been working at International School Bangkok for just about 9 months now. Before that, I was working in Yokohama International School in Japan, and before that, I was in Discovery College in Hong Kong. So I'm on a little bit of an Asian tour right now, but I'm currently working at International School Bangkok, and I've been in the virtual classroom for 11 weeks now. It's so important that we recognize and acknowledge all those people who have supported us. And of course, I want to shout out to the International School Bangkok, and there are some amazing educators there who I get to work with, who have given me so many ideas. To all the teachers and parents I ever get to work with, you give me so much great information, and most importantly to the students, because you're the ones who teach us the most, right? And I've also put here all the educators and thought leaders that I follow on Twitter. This is how I connected with Ryan and Wallace, through Twitter. And Twitter is just such a great place to catch up and get your professional development going. So if you ever follow me on Twitter, I retweet a lot of interesting articles. Follow me and you can see all that's going on in the world if you're not quite sure how to use Twitter. Okay, so we need to be pragmatic, patient, and positive when we are working with students in the virtual learning environment, particularly those with differences. And first of all, when I think about pragmatic, I've put stop, start, continue, which is a great visible thinking routine, but also is about what do we want to continue doing with our students that we had going on in the physical classrooms? What do we need to stop doing because it's just no longer appropriate or relevant? And what do we need to start doing instead? We also need to remind ourselves to be patient. We are all doing the best that we can. We as teachers are doing the best that we can. Our students are trying their best, and the parents and guardians who are supporting those students are all doing their best. And I've put here as well to be positive. I'm a very pragmatic person. I also like to try to be positive as well. And I've put here, see life as it is, but focus on the good bits. I mean, we can't deny that we're in a pandemic. We cannot deny that we've been in lockdown. I've been, like I've said, teaching online for 11 weeks now, and that's tiring, right? But there is also the opportunities there for us to think about what's going on and what's positive about this. And I think this links back to the question you had in the previous presentation. I put at the bottom of this slide, what opportunities and knowledge will we have gained from working virtually? We're going to walk away from this with so many new skills, new ideas, new opportunities for us and how we work and how students work. I think we really need to also think about what's going to be the positives coming out of this. Okay, so we have to consider when we're working with students with difference that there is an equity of access to their virtual learning platforms. So I've put, have a consistent use of platforms. And this, a lot of the time, should be coming from the senior leadership teams. They might be stipulating the platforms they want you to use. I think if there's consistency in the platform, it's easier for the students to actually access virtual learning. And some of the platforms that you might be using could be Zoom or Google Classroom or Hangout or Google Meet. One really key thing that you could be doing is record your lessons and post these after the lesson. We have the record function in Zoom, and also we record all our lessons anyway because it's important in terms of child safety. But what you have then is if you've recorded that lesson and you post it afterwards, students actually have the opportunity to revisit taught material, go at it at their own pace. And what we as teachers have is our additional teaching resources for future years. And another thing that we can do with these lessons that I haven't put on there is that we can actually watch ourselves back, see how we have delivered a lesson, see how we've taught it, and use that as very powerful feedback. Micro teaching has one of the highest effect sizes of all, you know, when we look at Hattie's effect sizes. So actually using that idea of micro teaching or reviewing what you've taught and critically appraising it will improve your teaching ability perhaps as well. I put here strive for multimodal teaching, and in the PE environment just now we've seen some fantastic opportunities of multimodal teaching, getting incredibly creative using brooms, etc. And it's so important that we can get students to be away from their computers and do other things, then that's really important. For terms of the physical environment, we need to ensure that the students have their learning stations set up in a way that is conducive for learning. And when we first moved on to virtual learning, a lot of teachers might have experienced this as well. You know, students might have been learning, you know, sitting on their bed, or, you know, they're in the kitchen making breakfast. You're like, that's not really the best place for you to be learning. So that we really need to encourage students to create a learning space which will help them focus, which will be quiet and uncluttered, and will help them concentrate. Also, okay, so in terms of content, we need to be consistent in our approach to introducing content. If we get into clear structures and routines, students with differences will feel more confident and safe within the lesson, and they'll be able to better access it. However, the longer you go on, you can start to experiment more, because once students are comfortable with the setup, we don't want them to get fatigued by it. So once they're comfortable, we encourage more flexibility around that. Plan to do less, and what you plan, please scaffold more. Just as I was distracted at the start of my presentation, students are constantly distracted in their online environments. And when we're only in the 2 dimensions and not in the 3rd dimension, we have no control over the student's environment. We cannot really see if they're on their mobile phones, if they're texting someone, if they're on another screen. So we need to try and acknowledge that it's just going to be harder for students to reach their zone of proximal development. And because of that, we have to build in extra scaffolds in how we describe things for them to do so. And that includes allowing extra time to complete tasks. As well, we need to be really clear in our outcomes, and we really want to avoid busy work. And we really need to interrogate what it is that we want to do as teachers. Like, what is my learning outcome for that student? What is it I want the student to do? And if there's any extraneous stuff in there, take it out. Avoid anything which could be considered as busy work, and focus on key standards. As I said, scaffold what you teach very clearly, but also scaffold the information that you present. Again, it's difficult for students to reach their zone of proximal development if they cannot navigate the packets that they've been given. So demarcate your worksheets on platforms, add in numbers, add in days, add in dates, put them in order so that students can easily access the materials, and there is consistency to your approach so the student will become more embedded in being able to do that. Continuing on with the presentation of information, please use bullet points, colored boxes, numbered lists. It's so useful to you to say, look at the green box on your screen, look at bullet point number 2. These all really help students to easily locate information. And think about the clarity of the information you're providing. Are your screencasts easy to follow? Are your explanations clear? Is it easy to locate that correct worksheet and package for the lesson? And again, this can link back to the idea of micro-teaching, recording your lessons and watching the back so you get more feedback as to how you are doing. Also be consistent in your delivery of your material, again, being very clear and to the point with the students so that they can focus it. And again, once the students are used to it, they will be ready for more change. Okay, so differentiation and diversity in learning tasks. Please differentiate worksheets, the use of language on those worksheets, and your expectation around the product to be presented. If you remember, I said there's twice as many distractions, so we need lots more scaffolding, and clearly explained worksheets will really support this. We can really explore and harness UDL as well. UDL is Universal Design for Learning. And you can find it on their websites through CAST of UDL. You can search it. There's a lot of stuff out there and they have some fantastic resources. But UDL really encourages multiple means of engagement for the student, multiple means of action and expression, and multiple means of representation. So providing choice, voice, and student agency in the work. But what I would say with doing this is do use scaffolds when you start with UDL. Some students could be overwhelmed when they have choice or more open-end tasks. If they're not used to it, if they're not necessarily from an inquiry background, they might not really know what to do with choice. So you can perhaps provide opportunities and different choices for them, and then increase more open-ended tasks as they become more familiar. Okay, we have to think of assessment in 3 ways: assessment for learning, of learning, and an assessment as learning. As I've just said, please leverage choice and voice for the students in ways that is appropriate for them. Find new ways to assess standards. Does that student really need to write an essay? Can you do an interview and assess the same standards? There are lots of different ways where we keep a rubric intact, but we can assess in different ways to ensure that the student can meet that rubric. Cut content, focus on key standards. It's much harder to do a breadth of coverage and online learning where there's so many distractions and this being a very unusual time for everybody. And also when I talk about assessment as learning, it comes down to these three questions. Those students who are assessment capable and are visible learners are able to articulate where they are now, where they need to be, and what they need to do to get there. So it's important that we have those dialogues with those students to help them be visible and know where they are in the curriculum and what they need to be doing and how to do it. This links into the three questions before: check-ins, chats, and conferencing. Please have clear, consistent, and open lines of communication. Get in contact with your students with differences often. Try and connect with them as much as possible. Create those opportunities so you engage with them one-on-one. Report progress with stakeholders. That includes parents, heads of learning, deans, however your school is organized. Make sure that the right people know what's going on for that student. And if there is any red flags for students who have differences or extra needs, please flag those straight away, because the sooner the learning support staff knows that a student is having difficulties or challenges, the sooner that we can put strategies and things into place to further to support that student. This is the last slide. This links in so nicely to the previous presentation, and it's all about encouraging students to have those healthy systems as well. And in healthy systems, we're thinking about exercise, nutrition, how the students are able to socialize, are they getting into good sleep patterns? So how are they doing all these things? How are they organized? How are they scheduling things? What does balance look like? And what we really want to encourage, and this was also mentioned earlier again, is taking technology breaks, taking movement breaks. As Bernardo and Lisa alluded to, we need to encourage students to move in all subjects. You know, they really need to be standing up, moving around. I stop all my lessons halfway through and encourage students to take a break and come back 3 minutes later, and I expect them to stand up and move and go and get a drink or go for a walk, whatever it is they need to do. But I don't like to see them in front of the computers for that time, just so that we can, you know, increase the blood flow to the brain. And another thing that I also encourage and do with a lot of my classes is mindfulness as well. And we can see a lovely little graphic there at the end about all the different things that mindfulness might actually entail. But again, mindfulness is great because it moves students off the screen. It gives them excuse to sit and do nothing and just listen. And I think it's really important that we give students those times just to sit and breathe and reflect. That's the presentation.